A young black girl in worn sneakers pushed through the gleaming doors of Chicago's most prestigious bank. "I need to check my balance, please," she said softly. Logan Reeves, the Millionaire CEO, looked up from his mahogany desk and laughed out loud. But when his computer screen flickered to life, the laughter died in his throat, and his world would never be the same. Before we reveal what Logan saw on that screen, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because this twist is about to shock you. The autumn sun hung low over Chicago's financial district, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across streets where fortunes were made and lost before most people finished their morning coffee. 12-year-old Ariana Bennett stood on the corner of West Adams and South Wells, staring up at Sterling Heights private banking like it was a fortress designed to keep people like her out. Because it was. At 12, Ariana had already learned what most people spend a lifetime refusing to acknowledge: that there were two types of people in this city. Those who belonged in buildings like these, whose very presence commanded respect and deference, and those who scrubbed the floors after everyone else went home, whose existence was meant to be invisible. Today, for the first time in her life, Ariana was about to cross that invisible line. She clutched the crumpled envelope tighter, feeling the edge of the black card inside press against her palm through the worn paper. Her sneakers, 2 years old and splitting at the seams where the sole met the canvas, felt heavier with each step toward the revolving doors. She'd stood outside for almost an hour, watching wealthy people flow in and out like water, each one more confident than the last, each one belonging in a way she never had. The revolving door felt impossibly heavy as she pushed against it. Then she was inside, and the blast of air conditioning hit her like a physical force, so different from the broken heating in her apartment 3 miles south, where she'd left 7-year-old Marcus with Mrs. Patterson, asking when his sister would be home, asking if they'd have dinner tonight. The lobby was unlike anything Ariana had ever seen outside of movies. Marble columns stretched 30 feet high, supporting a ceiling decorated with what looked like actual gold leaf. Crystal chandeliers, each one probably worth more than her grandmother had made in a year of double shifts at the hospital, cast a warm, expensive glow over leather furniture that seemed too perfect to actually sit on. Everything gleamed: the polished floors, the brass fixtures, the faces of people who'd never known hunger. Everything smelled expensive too. Fresh orchids in massive vases, polished mahogany, and something else she couldn't quite identify but recognized instinctively: privilege. Success. The scent of doors that had always been open, of choices that had always been available, of security that had never been questioned. Ariana's fingers found the envelope in her jacket pocket, a donation bin find that was clean but patched at the elbow. The card inside had arrived 6 months ago, a week after Grandma Rose died. She'd been too afraid to use it until now, too afraid it might be some kind of mistake that would get her in trouble, that someone would say there'd been an error and take back the only hope she had left. But yesterday, when the landlord had taped the eviction notice to their door, when Marcus had asked her why the refrigerator was empty again, when she'd counted the coins in the jar and realized they didn't even have enough for a loaf of bread, she'd realized she had no choice. "Can I help you?" The voice came from behind a sleek reception desk that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. The woman sitting there had perfectly styled blonde hair, flawless makeup, and a smile that froze the moment her eyes landed on Ariana. She was looking at Ariana the way people in this part of the city always looked at her, like she was something unpleasant that had accidentally wandered in from the street. Ariana's voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again, forcing herself to speak clearly. "I need to check my balance." Jessica, the nameplate on her desk read, raised her perfectly shaped eyebrows slightly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but this is a private banking institution. Perhaps you're looking for the community bank down on." "I have an account here," Ariana interrupted, immediately regretting how desperate she sounded. "I have a card." She pulled the envelope from her pocket with trembling hands, extracting the black card that felt too heavy, too real. Jessica's expression shifted from condescending dismissal to visible confusion as she looked at it. The logo was unmistakable, Sterling Heights distinctive silver S embossed on matte black. But Jessica's eyes kept moving between the card and Ariana's face, her mind clearly struggling to reconcile how a girl in splitting sneakers and a patched jacket could possibly have an account at one of the most exclusive banks in Chicago. "I see," Jessica said slowly, her tone suggesting she saw nothing at all. "Well, you'll need to speak with one of our account managers. If you'll just wait over." "Jessica." The voice cut through the lobby like a blade. "What's going on here?" Ariana barely heard the receptionist's response. Her attention had been captured by the man striding across the marble floor with the kind of authority that said he'd never been told no in his entire life, had never waited for anything, had never stood on the outside of anywhere looking in. Logan Reeves. Even Ariana, who knew nothing about banking and cared less, had seen his face before. On billboards along the highway. On the business section of newspapers discarded on the bus. On the television at Mrs. Patterson's apartment during the financial news segments that Ariana never watched. At 40 years old, he was Chicago's golden boy, self-made millionaire, CEO of Sterling Heights, the man who'd turned a struggling private bank into one of the most successful in the Midwest. The man who appeared on CNBC to talk about strategic wealth management and maximizing returns in that smooth voice that made it sound like money was the only thing that mattered in the world. His suit probably cost $3,000. Ariana knew this because she'd seen the price tags in the window at Nordstrom when she'd taken Marcus on the bus to see the Christmas displays last year. His shoes were so perfectly polished she could see the chandelier reflected in them. His salt and pepper hair was styled in a way that looked casual but clearly wasn't, the kind of haircut that cost more than a week's worth of groceries. And his watch. Ariana had seen enough luxury watches in store windows to recognize a Patek Philippe. Could have paid her rent for a year. Logan Reeves was everything Ariana wasn't. Powerful, respected, belonging. And he was staring directly at her with an expression of barely concealed disgust. "Jessica," Logan called, his voice carrying across the lobby with the easy authority of someone who'd never been ignored in his life, someone who'd never had to repeat themselves or raise their voice to be heard. "We have security protocols for a reason. Is there a particular reason we're allowing street children into the building?" The words hit Ariana like a physical blow. Around the lobby, other clients turned to stare. A woman dripping in diamonds and a fur coat despite the mild autumn weather. A man in a pinstripe suit carrying a leather briefcase, an elderly couple in designer clothes. All watching, all judging, all finding her exactly as lacking as she'd feared. Ariana felt her face burning, a mixture of shame and anger that made her eyes sting. She wanted to defend herself, to explain, but her throat had closed up and no words would come. "Sir," Jessica began, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty, "this young lady claims she has an account with us." "An account?" Logan's laugh was sharp and cruel, designed to cut and humiliate. Heads turned throughout the lobby. People were no longer even pretending to mind their own business. "Look at her, Jessica. Her shoes are falling apart. That jacket looks like it came from a donation bin. I'm pretty sure there's dirt under her fingernails." He turned to Ariana, and his voice dripped with mock concern. "Honey, I think you're confused. The community bank is 6 blocks that way, down on South State. This is a private institution for—" "I have a card," Ariana said. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to pull it out again, to hold it up with trembling fingers. Logan's expression shifted from amused to annoyed. He'd clearly expected her to run away crying, to slink back out those revolving doors and disappear back into whatever world she'd come from. The fact that this poor kid was actually challenging him seemed to offend him on a personal level. More laughter rippled through the lobby. The woman in diamonds covered her mouth with a manicured hand, her eyes sparkling with mean delight. The man in the pinstripe suit shook his head, muttering something to his companion about standards slipping, about the neighborhood going downhill. Ariana wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to push back through those revolving doors, to never come back. She'd been stupid to think she could belong here, even for 5 minutes. She'd been stupid to think a card in an envelope could change anything about who she was or where she came from. But then she thought about Marcus. 7 years old, with his grandmother's eyes and his grandmother's smile, asking her this morning if they'd have breakfast. She thought about the eviction notice. She thought about the empty refrigerator. She thought about Grandma Rose, who'd worked herself to death for reasons Ariana still didn't understand, who'd told her in that last letter to be brave, to never let anyone make her feel small. "I just want to check my balance," Ariana said again, louder this time. Her voice still shook, but she forced herself to step forward, to walk across that perfect marble floor toward Logan Reeves' massive desk. Her worn sneakers squeaked with each step, impossibly loud in the suddenly silent lobby. Logan's expression shifted again, from irritation to something else. Something that looked almost like curiosity, but not quite. Something more predatory. Like a cat that had found a mouse and decided to play with it before the kill. "Security," Logan called out, but held up a hand when 2 uniformed guards started moving toward them. A slow smile spread across his face. "Actually, wait. This could be entertaining." He leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers in front of him like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. "Come here, girl. Let's see this mysterious account of yours." Ariana walked forward on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. She could feel every eye in the lobby watching her, judging her, finding her lacking in 1,000 different ways. The envelope in her hand felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. When she reached Logan's desk, she had to look up to meet his eyes. He was still smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who was about to enjoy themselves at someone else's expense. "Let me guess," Logan said, loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "You found this card in the trash. Or maybe you stole it from someone's mailbox. That's a federal crime, you know. Mail fraud. I could have you arrested right now, have the police here in 5 minutes." "I didn't steal it," Ariana said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It came to my apartment after my grandmother died. My name is on it." "Your name is on it," Logan repeated mockingly, drawing out each word. "And what might that name be? Should I be expecting a trust fund baby hiding under all that dirt?" "Ariana," she said, lifting her chin despite the tears threatening to spill. "Ariana Bennett." Logan snatched the card from her hand and turned to his computer, his fingers flying across the keyboard with exaggerated patience, like a parent humoring a child's ridiculous story. "Ariana Bennett," he repeated slowly. "Well, let's see what we find, shall we? I'm sure this will be absolutely fascinating." The typing seemed to go on forever. Ariana could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, could feel the weight of all those eyes on her back. Around the lobby, people had stopped even pretending to conduct their own business. They were all watching, waiting to see this poor black girl get exposed as a thief or a liar or whatever Logan Reeves decided she was. Ariana's hand went to her pocket, touching the other thing she always carried. Grandma Rose's last letter, folded and refolded so many times the creases were starting to tear. "Be brave, baby," Grandma Rose had written. "Don't let anyone make you feel small. You're worth more than they'll ever understand." Logan's fingers stopped typing. His eyes locked onto the screen, and for just a fraction of a second, Ariana saw his confident expression flicker. It was barely noticeable, just a slight widening of the eyes, a tiny tightening around the mouth. But it was there. Then the professional mask slammed back into place, and Logan's smile grew even wider, though it no longer quite reached his eyes. "Well, well," Logan said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "It appears you do have an account with us, Ariana Bennett. How about that?" He paused dramatically, milking the moment for all it was worth, playing to his audience. "Ladies and gentlemen, it seems we have a genuine client among us. The account shows a balance of..." He stopped mid-sentence. His eyes returned to the screen, and this time, the flicker of surprise lasted longer. Much longer. His smile froze on his face, taking on a strained quality, like a mask that no longer quite fit. The balance shows. Logan tried again, but his voice had lost some of its mocking certainty. Ariana watched as the banker's face went through a series of rapid changes: confusion, disbelief, shock, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. "That's impossible," Logan whispered, so quietly that only Ariana could hear him. "That's absolutely impossible." Logan Reeves had seen many things in his 20 years of private banking. He'd watched tech entrepreneurs become billionaires overnight when their startups went public. He'd seen old family fortunes crumble in the 2008 crash. He'd witnessed the kind of generational wealth that most people couldn't even comprehend, the kind that existed in a completely different reality from the world where normal people worried about rent and groceries and whether they'd have dinner tonight. But he had never, not once in his entire career, seen anything like what was currently displayed on his screen. The cursor blinked on Logan's screen, but he couldn't look away from the number. $52.4 million. Belonging to a child whose shoes were held together with hope and determination. A child he'd just humiliated in front of a lobby full of witnesses. Jennifer Martinez, senior account manager, appeared at his shoulder. She'd worked in private banking for 25 years and had seen everything. Until now. Her eyes went wide. "Mr. Reeves, is that?" "Verify it." Logan cut her off, his voice tight. "Check your terminal. Tell me I'm seeing this wrong." But even as he said it, Logan Reeves knew with terrible certainty that he wasn't wrong. The screen didn't lie. The database didn't make mistakes. Which meant everything else, everything he'd assumed, everything he'd said, everything he'd done in the last 10 minutes, was about to come back to haunt him. And standing on the other side of his desk, a 12-year-old girl was waiting for an answer to the simplest question in the world. "Is there enough for groceries?" The cursor blinked on Logan's screen, but he couldn't look away from the number. $52.4 million. Belonging to a child whose shoes were held together with hope and determination. A child he'd just humiliated in front of a lobby full of witnesses. Jennifer Martinez, senior account manager, appeared at his shoulder. She'd worked in private banking for 25 years and had seen everything. Until now. Her eyes went wide. "Mr. Reeves, is that?" "Verify it." Logan cut her off, his voice tight. "Check your terminal. Tell me I'm seeing this wrong." But even as he said it, Logan Reeves knew with terrible certainty that he wasn't wrong. The screen didn't lie. The database didn't make mistakes. Which meant everything else, everything he'd assumed, everything he'd said, everything he'd done in the last 10 minutes, was about to come back to haunt him. And standing on the other side of his desk, a 12-year-old girl was waiting for an answer to the simplest question in the world. "Is there enough for groceries?" Jennifer's heels clicked rapidly against the marble as she hurried to her own terminal. Logan watched her fingers fly across the keyboard, watched her face go through the same progression of emotions his must have displayed moments ago. Confusion, disbelief, shock. "Mr. Reeves," Jessica called from the reception desk, her voice uncertain. "Should I?" "Verify it, Jessica," Logan snapped, louder than he'd intended. Around the lobby, the clients who'd been so entertained by his mockery of Ariana were now watching with renewed interest, sensing something had shifted, that the show had taken an unexpected turn. Jessica's fingers trembled as she typed, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against the keys. When she found the account, she gasped audibly, a sharp intake of breath that carried across the suddenly silent lobby. "Mr. Reeves," Jessica said, her voice shaking. It's the same. $52.4 million. Last deposit was 6 months ago. There haven't been any withdrawals. No activity of any kind since the account was opened. The lobby had gone completely silent. Even the ambient noise, the soft classical music, the quiet conversations, the rustle of newspapers, seemed to have stopped. Everyone was staring now. The woman in diamonds had lowered her phone. The man in the pinstripe suit had turned completely around in his chair. The elderly couple had abandoned all pretense of privacy. Logan felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. A 12-year-old girl living in obvious poverty, wearing clothes that looked like they'd been donated and shoes that were literally falling apart, couldn't have $52 million. There had to be an explanation. A rational explanation. There must be a system error, Logan said, but even to his own ears, his voice lacked conviction. He refreshed the screen, his movements mechanical. The number didn't change. $52.4 million. Account holder, Ariana Bennett. Date of birth, March 15, 2013. Age, 12 years, 7 months. It's not an error, Jennifer said quietly, her eyes still locked on her screen. She looked up at Logan, and there was something in her expression he'd never seen before. Not respect. Jennifer had been with the bank long enough that Logan's wealth and position didn't particularly impress her. This was something else. Disappointment, maybe. Or judgment. Logan's mind raced. Money laundering. It had to be. Some kind of criminal operation using a child's name to hide assets. That was the only logical explanation. No legitimate account could. Mr. Reeves. Jennifer's voice was firm now, carrying a tone of authority that made Logan look up sharply. I need to speak with Miss Bennett privately. This requires discretion. Discretion. Logan's voice came out sharper than he intended. Jennifer, this is clearly some kind of what? Jennifer interrupted, and there was steel in her voice now. Some kind of mistake, some kind of fraud, or some kind of situation where you've just publicly humiliated one of the wealthiest clients this bank has ever served. The words hit Logan like a slap. Around the lobby, he could feel the shift in atmosphere. The woman in diamonds was no longer smiling. The man in the pinstripe suit had pulled out his phone, probably texting his friends about what he was witnessing. The elderly couple was whispering to each other, their expressions a mixture of shock and disapproval. Logan began, but Jennifer cut him off again. You were just making assumptions, Jennifer said, her voice quiet but carrying clearly in the silent lobby. Based on a child's appearance. Based on the color of her skin. Based on the fact that her shoes are falling apart and she doesn't look like she belongs here. Logan felt his face flush. I didn't. But he had. They both knew it. Everyone in the lobby knew it. Jennifer turned to Ariana, and her entire demeanor changed. The steel melted away, replaced by genuine kindness. Miss Bennett, I apologize for this situation. Would you mind coming with me? We can discuss your account somewhere more comfortable. More private. Ariana hadn't moved from her spot in front of Logan's desk. She was still standing there, her hands clenched at her sides, her chin lifted despite the tears Logan could now see gathering in her eyes. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet he had to strain to hear it. Is there enough? She asked again. For groceries? My brother Marcus, he's only 7, and he's been asking if we can eat dinner tonight. I didn't know what to tell him. The simple question shattered something in the lobby. The woman in diamonds looked away, suddenly fascinated by her phone. The man in the pinstripe suit cleared his throat uncomfortably and turned back to his newspaper. Even Jessica at the reception desk seemed unable to meet anyone's eyes. But Logan couldn't look away. He was staring at this child, this 12-year-old girl who had $52 million to her name and was asking if she had enough money for groceries, who'd been living with such poverty, such hunger, that even now, standing in front of proof of unimaginable wealth, her first thought wasn't about what she could buy for herself. It was about feeding her 7-year-old brother dinner. Yes, Logan heard himself say, his voice sounding strange and distant. There's enough. There's more than enough. Ariana nodded once, a sharp, jerky movement. A single tear escaped and rolled down her cheek, cutting a clean line through the dirt she'd tried so hard to wash off that morning. Actually, Jennifer said, her voice firm, I'll handle this from here, Logan. Miss Bennett deserves better than. She gestured vaguely at the lobby, at the staring clients, at Logan himself. This. Jennifer, I should be present for. You've done enough, Jennifer said, and the words carried a weight that made Logan fall silent. She turned to Ariana with a gentle smile. Come with me, sweetheart. Let's get you somewhere more comfortable. And I think we should probably get you something to eat, too. When's the last time you had a proper meal? Ariana's response was so quiet Logan almost didn't hear it. Yesterday morning. Mrs. Patterson gave us oatmeal. Jennifer's jaw tightened. She placed a gentle hand on Ariana's shoulder and guided her toward the elevators, away from the staring crowd, away from Logan's desk, away from the humiliation he'd inflicted. As they walked away, Logan sat frozen at his desk, watching them go. Around him, the lobby was slowly coming back to life. Quiet conversations resumed. People returned to their phones and newspapers and consultations with account managers. But Logan could feel their eyes on him when they thought he wasn't looking. Could sense their judgment in the careful way they avoided meeting his gaze. For the first time in years, for the first time since he'd clawed his way out of poverty and into this world of marble lobbies and crystal chandeliers, Logan Reeves felt something he thought he'd left behind in his difficult childhood. Shame. Deep, burning, inescapable shame. The elevator doors closed on Ariana and Jennifer, and Logan was left staring at his computer screen, at the impossible number that refused to disappear no matter how many times he blinked. $52.4 million. And he'd called her a thief. Logan sat alone at his desk, staring at the elevator doors that had swallowed Ariana Bennett and Jennifer Martinez. The lobby had returned to its usual rhythm. Hushed conversations, the soft rustle of financial documents, the quiet click of expensive shoes against marble. But nothing felt the same. The air itself seemed different, charged with something Logan couldn't name but could feel pressing against his chest. His hands were shaking. Logan Reeves, who'd negotiated billion-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat, who'd stared down hostile board members and aggressive competitors with ice in his veins, couldn't stop his hands from trembling. $52.4 million. He pulled up the account details again, scrolling through the information with a growing sense of unreality. The account had been opened exactly 6 months ago, August 15th. A single deposit, $50 million from a life insurance policy held by Rose Marie Bennett, deceased. Another deposit, $2.4 million from a personal savings account, also belonging to Rose Marie Bennett. The trust structure was sophisticated, extraordinarily sophisticated. Monthly allowance of $12,000 available immediately to the account holder, with the full principal protected until Ariana Bennett's 25th birthday. Educational provisions, healthcare coverage, emergency access protocols, guardian compensation structure. Everything carefully planned, meticulously organized, legally airtight. This wasn't some hastily assembled scheme. This was the work of someone who'd thought through every detail, every possibility, every potential need. Someone who'd loved these children enough to plan for a future they wouldn't be there to see. Logan clicked through to the insurance policy documentation. Rose Marie Bennett, registered nurse at Cook County Hospital for 40 years. Salary, $58,000 annually at time of death. Policy premiums, $247 per month, paid without fail for 15 years. Never a single missed payment. Not one. He did the math quickly in his head. 15 years of $247 monthly payments came to just over $44,000. Through compound interest and careful policy selection, Rose Bennett had turned that into $50 million. And while she was paying those premiums, while she was building this fortune for her grandchildren, she'd been living in. Logan pulled up the address associated with the account, Englewood, one of the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago. The apartment number was 4D. Logan had grown up not far from there, before his father's construction business had finally taken off. He knew exactly what kind of building that address represented. Knew what $800 a month rent bought you in that part of the city. Broken elevators, unreliable heat, windows that didn't quite close, the smell of mildew and desperation. Rose Bennett had been paying $247 a month for a life insurance policy while living in an $800 a month apartment on a $58,000 annual salary. The numbers didn't make sense until you understood what they represented. Sacrifice, Every month, without fail, this woman had chosen her grandchildren's future over her own comfort. Mr. Reeves. Logan looked up to find Jessica standing beside his desk, her earlier confidence replaced by visible uncertainty. She was holding a folder, gripping it so tightly her knuckles had gone white. "What is it?" His voice came out harsher than he intended. "I pulled the full account file," Jessica said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "I thought you should see this before anything else happens." She placed the folder on his desk and stepped back quickly, like she was afraid to be associated with whatever it contained. Logan opened it, and his stomach dropped. The first document was a letter from Sterling Heights Legal Department, dated 6 months ago. It detailed a meeting between Rose Bennett and Thomas Chun, one of their junior account managers who'd since been promoted and transferred to the New York office. According to the letter, Rose had come to the bank not through the main entrance, but through the service entrance. She'd been part of the cleaning crew. The cleaning crew. Logan felt something twist in his chest. Rose Bennett had cleaned this building, had probably scrubbed these very floors he walked across every day without thinking, had emptied his trash, vacuumed his office, cleaned the bathroom he used. And he'd never noticed her, never seen her, never once thought about the invisible people who kept his perfect world running. The letter continued. Rose had asked to speak with someone about setting up a trust for her grandchildren. Most of the staff had dismissed her, assumed she was confused or didn't understand how private banking worked. But Thomas Chun, fresh out of college and not yet hardened by the industry's casual cruelty, had listened, had stayed after his shift to help her understand her options, had worked with her for weeks to structure everything properly. According to Thomas's notes, Rose had known she was dying. Stage 4 cancer, already spread to her bones and liver. The doctors had given her 6 months. She'd used every single day of those 6 months to make sure Ariana and Marcus would be taken care of. Logan flipped to the next document. It was a photocopy of a handwritten letter, the original presumably given to Ariana. The handwriting was shaky but careful, each word formed with obvious effort. "My precious Ariana, if you're reading this, I'm dancing with the angels now." Logan couldn't finish it. He closed the folder abruptly, unable to bear reading the words of a woman who'd sacrificed everything for children he'd just humiliated in front of a lobby full of strangers. "There's more," Jessica said quietly. "The account is flagged for special handling." Thomas left notes. He said Rose made him promise that when the children came to access the account, not if, when, we would treat them with dignity. She was worried they'd be judged, that people would look at them and see poverty instead of worth. Logan laughed, but it came out bitter and hollow. She was right to worry. Jessica didn't respond. She didn't need to. They both knew what had just happened, what Logan had done. Where did Jennifer take her? Logan asked. Conference room B. She ordered food from the Italian place on the corner. The girl, Ariana, she said she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. And Logan had mocked her clothes, her shoes, her appearance. Had called her a thief in front of everyone. Had treated her like she was nothing. He thought about his own childhood. Remembered what it felt like to be 12 years old and hungry. Remembered wearing shoes that were too small because his mother couldn't afford new ones. Remembered the kids at school who'd laughed at him. The teachers who'd looked at him like he was already a lost cause, destined for nothing. He'd sworn then that he'd never be powerless again. That he'd become successful enough, wealthy enough, powerful enough that no one could ever make him feel small. And he'd done it. He'd clawed his way out of poverty and into this world of marble lobbies and crystal chandeliers. But somewhere along the way, he'd become exactly like the people who'd hurt him. He'd become the bully instead of the victim. He'd started measuring worth by bank accounts and judging people by their shoes. Logan stood abruptly, the folder still in his hands. "I need to speak with Jennifer and Miss Bennett." Jessica's eyes widened. "Mr. Reeves, I don't think." "I need to apologize," Logan said, and the words felt foreign in his mouth. How long had it been since he'd genuinely apologized for anything? Years, probably. When you were rich and powerful enough, you didn't have to apologize. People apologized to you, even when you were wrong. Sir, maybe you should give them some time. Jennifer was pretty clear that. I know what Jennifer said. Logan's voice was sharper than he intended. He took a breath, trying to find calm. But that little girl asked if she had enough money for groceries. She has $52 million, Jessica. $52 million. And she was asking about groceries because she's been going hungry. Because her grandmother died 6 months ago and left them alone. And he couldn't finish. Couldn't articulate the magnitude of what he'd done. The casual cruelty he'd inflicted on a child who'd already lost so much. Jessica studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she said, Conference room B is on the 14th floor. But Mr. Reeves, if you're going up there, make sure you mean what you're about to say. That little girl has been hurt enough. Logan nodded, gripping the folder tighter. As he walked toward the elevators, he could feel the eyes of every person in the lobby following him. Could sense their judgment, their curiosity, their schadenfreude at seeing the great Logan Reeves brought low by a 12-year-old girl in broken shoes. Let them watch. Let them judge. For once in his life, Logan Reeves deserved every bit of it. The elevator doors opened, and he stepped inside. As they closed, shutting out the lobby and its staring crowd, Logan caught his reflection in the polished steel. He barely recognized the man looking back at him. $52.4 million. And the first thing Ariana Bennett had asked was whether she could feed her little brother dinner. The elevator began to rise, carrying Logan toward a conversation he had no idea how to navigate, toward an apology that could never be enough, toward a 12-year-old girl who'd just taught him something his expensive education never could. That worth had nothing to do with the numbers in your bank account. The 14th floor of Sterling Heights Private Banking was designed for discretion. While the lobby existed to impress, to overwhelm, to remind clients of their own importance, the executive conference rooms were built for comfort. For the kind of conversations that required privacy, soft voices, and the illusion that money, no matter how much of it, was simply a tool, not a measure of human worth. Conference Room B had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan, furniture upholstered in soft gray fabric that actually invited you to sit down, and lighting that felt warm rather than institutional. Jennifer guided Ariana inside and gestured to one of the chairs at the oval table. "Have a seat, sweetheart," Jennifer said gently. "I'm going to order us some food. When's the last time you ate?" Ariana perched on the edge of the chair, her worn sneakers barely touching the plush carpet. "Yesterday morning. Mrs. Patterson, she's our neighbor, she gave us oatmeal." Jennifer's expression didn't change, but Ariana saw her jaw tighten slightly. "Okay, well, let's fix that right now." She picked up the phone on the credenza and dialed. "Yes, this is Jennifer Martinez in Conference Room B. I need a lunch order from Francesca's. 3 Italian sandwiches. Make them the large ones. Caesar salad. Fruit platter. That pasta salad with the sun-dried tomatoes. Breadsticks. Cookies, get the variety pack. And drinks, juice boxes, water, and, do you like soda, Ariana?" Ariana nodded, still not quite believing this was happening. "Add some Coke and Sprite," Jennifer continued. "Actually, just send up one of everything. Bill it to my account. I need it here in 15 minutes. She hung up and turned back to Ariana with a warm smile. "Food's on its way. Now, while we wait, let's talk about why you're here." Ariana's hand went automatically to her pocket, feeling the outline of Grandma Rose's letter through the thin fabric of her jacket. "I just needed to check my balance. The landlord put an eviction notice on our door, and Marcus, that's my little brother, he's been asking about dinner, and I didn't know what to tell him. I found this card 6 months ago after Grandma died, but I was too scared to use it. I thought maybe it was a mistake." "Not a mistake," Jennifer said softly. She pulled out a tablet and began typing, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. "Ariana, can you tell me about your grandmother?" The question opened something in Ariana's chest. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "Grandma Rose? She died 6 months ago. Cancer. She didn't tell us how sick she was. She just kept going to work, kept taking care of us, kept pretending everything was fine. And then one day she went to the hospital, and she never came home. Jennifer's eyes were bright with unshed tears of her own. I'm so sorry, honey. That must have been incredibly hard. She raised us, Ariana continued, the words spilling out now. Our mom left when Marcus was a baby. Just left one day and never came back. And our dad, we never knew him. So it was just Grandma. She worked at the hospital, double shifts most days. She'd come home so tired she could barely stand up, but she'd still help me with my homework, still read to Marcus, still make sure we had clean clothes for school. Jennifer was reading something on her tablet, her expression shifting between amazement and sorrow. Your grandmother worked as a registered nurse for 40 years at Cook County Hospital. Started when she was 22, worked until 2 months before she passed away. She loved that job, Ariana said, wiping her eyes. She said helping people was the most important work anyone could do. Even when she was so tired, even when her feet hurt so bad she had to soak them every night, she said it was worth it because she was making a difference. Her salary was modest, Jennifer said, still reading. $58,000 a year at the end. But Ariana, your grandmother was incredibly smart about money. She had a life insurance policy that she'd been paying into since before you were born. $247 a month, every month, for 15 years. She never missed a single payment. Ariana shook her head. We could barely afford food. How did she? She sacrificed, Jennifer said simply. Every month, no matter what else was happening, she paid that premium. The policy was designed to grow over time, with compound interest and careful investment. When she passed away, it paid out $50 million. The number was so large Ariana couldn't process it. 50 million. It didn't sound real. Nothing about this felt real. Plus, Jennifer continued, she had her own savings. $2.4 million that she'd accumulated over 40 years of working. Small amounts, put away consistently. Your grandmother understood something that most people never learn, that time and discipline can build extraordinary wealth. A knock at the door interrupted them. Jennifer opened it to reveal a young man wheeling in a cart laden with food. The smell hit Ariana immediately, fresh bread, garlic, tomatoes, cheese, and her stomach cramped with sudden, desperate hunger. Thank you, David, Jennifer said, signing for the delivery. We'll handle it from here. Once he left, Jennifer began unpacking the bags, setting containers and plates across the table. Eat, she said firmly. We can talk while you eat. Ariana didn't need to be told twice. She grabbed a sandwich and bit into it, and the taste of actual food, real, fresh, abundant food, nearly made her cry again. She'd been so hungry for so long that she'd almost forgotten what it felt like to be full. Jennifer watched her for a moment, then continued softly. Your grandmother set up a trust fund for you and Marcus. It's very sophisticated. She must have worked with someone who really knew what they were doing. The full $52.4 million is protected until you turn 25. But starting immediately, you have access to a monthly allowance. Ariana paused mid-bite. How much? $12,000 a month. The sandwich slipped from Ariana's fingers. $12,000 a month. She'd never seen that much money in her entire life. That's enough for housing in a safe neighborhood, Jennifer explained, pulling up documents on her tablet and turning it so Ariana could see. Good schools for you and Marcus. Food, clothes, medical care, everything you need. The trust also has specific provisions for education. College tuition is fully funded through a separate account. And there's healthcare coverage for both of you, including Marcus's asthma treatments. How did she know about Marcus's asthma? Ariana whispered. We only found out last year. The trust was set up 6 months ago, right before she passed, Jennifer said gently. She was very specific about what you'd need. She thought of everything, Ariana. Guardian compensation for whoever takes care of you until you're 18. Emergency funds for unexpected expenses. Even a provision for therapy. She wanted you to have help processing your grief. Ariana stared at the numbers on the screen, at the careful provisions, at the evidence of her grandmother's love translated into legal documents and financial structures. I don't understand. We were so poor. We could barely pay rent. She worked so hard, and we still didn't have enough. How could she have saved all this? She chose you, Jennifer said simply. Every month, she chose your future over her own comfort. $247 a month doesn't sound like much, but over 15 years, with the right policy, it becomes $50 million. And the savings, she probably put away $50, maybe $100 every paycheck. For 40 years. Ariana thought about all the times Grandma Rose had said she wasn't hungry, that she'd already eaten, that Ariana and Marcus should have her portion. Thought about the worn clothes she'd worn year after year. The shoes she'd resold instead of replacing. The bus she'd taken instead of the train because it was 50 cents cheaper. She was starving herself, Ariana said, the realization hitting her like a fist. All those times she said she wasn't hungry, she was saving that money for us. Jennifer didn't deny it. She loved you more than anything in the world. This trust is proof of that. Ariana pulled the letter from her pocket with shaking hands. The paper was worn soft from repeated reading, the creases threatening to tear. She left me this. I've read it so many times I know it by heart, but I didn't understand what she meant about taking care of things. May I read it? Jennifer asked gently. Ariana handed it over, watching as Jennifer unfolded the precious paper. She watched Jennifer's eyes move across Grandma Rose's shaky handwriting, watched tears begin to stream down the older woman's face. When Jennifer finished, she carefully refolded the letter and handed it back. Your grandmother was an extraordinary woman, Jennifer said, her voice thick with emotion. And she raised an extraordinary granddaughter. The way you came here today, even though you were terrified. The way you stood up to Logan, even when he was cruel to you. The way your first thought with all this money was making sure Marcus could eat dinner. That's all her. That's the legacy she left you. A soft knock at the door made them both look up. Jennifer's expression hardened slightly. Come in. The door opened, and Logan Reeves stepped inside, his earlier confidence completely absent. He looked diminished somehow, smaller than he had in the lobby. He was carrying a folder, gripping it like a lifeline. Jennifer, he began. Miss Bennett. You've done enough, Logan, Jennifer said, her tone professional but cold. I think it's best if you. Please, Logan interrupted, and there was something raw in his voice. I need to apologize. I need to. He stopped, seeming to struggle for words. What I did downstairs was unforgivable. And I need Miss Bennett to know that. Logan stood in the doorway of Conference Room B, folders still clutched in his hands, and for the first time in 20 years, he had absolutely no idea what to say. Jennifer Martinez was staring at him with an expression that could freeze Lake Michigan. And Ariana Bennett, the child he'd humiliated, the girl whose worth he'd measured by her shoes, was looking at him with eyes that were too old, too knowing, too weary for someone who should still believe the world was fundamentally good. Jennifer, Logan began, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Miss Bennett, I need to. You need to leave, Jennifer said, her tone professional but carrying an edge that could cut steel. You've done quite enough for one day, Logan. I know I have. But I need to apologize. I need Miss Bennett to understand that what I did was unforgivable. Jennifer supplied. Cruel? Prejudiced? Take your pick, Logan. They all apply. The words stung because they were true. Logan looked at Ariana, who was sitting at the conference table surrounded by food containers, a half-eaten sandwich in front of her. She was so small in that chair, so young. 12 years old. The same age he'd been when Tommy Richardson had knocked his lunch tray out of his hands in the school cafeteria. When everyone had laughed at the poor kid in second-hand clothes scrambling to pick up scattered food he couldn't afford to replace. Logan had sworn that day he'd never be vulnerable again. And he'd kept that promise. He'd made himself powerful, untouchable, wealthy enough that no one could ever make him feel small. But in doing so, he'd become Tommy Richardson. He'd become the bully. May I come in? Logan asked quietly. Please. 5 minutes. If you want me to leave after that, I will. Jennifer looked at Ariana, deferring to her. It was the right thing to do. This was Ariana's decision, not theirs. The girl studied Logan for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded once. Logan entered, closing the door softly behind him. He didn't sit down, didn't presume that level of familiarity. Instead, he stood near the window, the folder held loosely in his hands. Miss Bennett, he began, then stopped. Ariana, my name is Logan Reeves, and I owe you an apology. What I did downstairs was inexcusable. I judged you based on your appearance, based on assumptions I had no right to make. I humiliated you in front of a room full of strangers, and I did it deliberately, for entertainment. There's no excuse for that. None. Ariana didn't respond. She just watched him with those two old eyes waiting. I pulled your grandmother's file, Logan continued, holding up the folder. I know I had no right to do that without your permission, but I needed to understand. I needed to know who Rose Bennett was, because the numbers on that screen, they didn't make sense until I read about her. He opened the folder, looking down at the documents inside. Your grandmother worked as a registered nurse for 40 years. She made a modest salary, $58,000 a year at the end. She lived in Englewood, in an $800 a month apartment. And every month, without fail, she paid $247 into a life insurance policy. For 15 years. Logan looked up at Ariana. Do you understand what that means? How much she sacrificed? That money could have bought better food, warmer clothes, a safer apartment. But she chose your future instead. Every single month she chose you. I know, Ariana said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken since he entered. She left me a letter explaining everything. May I? Logan hesitated. May I read it? The letter. Ariana's hand went protectively to her jacket pocket. For a moment, Logan thought she'd refuse, and he wouldn't have blamed her. But then she slowly pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper. The creases were so deep they were starting to tear. She'd read this letter dozens of times, maybe hundreds. It was clearly the most precious thing she owned. She held it out to Jennifer instead of Logan. Can you read it? Out loud. I want him to hear it in her voice, not his. Jennifer took the letter carefully, handling it like the treasure it was. She unfolded it slowly, and Logan could see her eyes scanning the first few lines. Her expression crumbled immediately. Are you sure? Jennifer asked Ariana softly. Ariana nodded. Jennifer cleared her throat and began to read, her voice already thick with emotion. My precious Ariana, if you're reading this, I'm dancing with the angels now. Don't cry for me, baby. I lived a good life, and the best part was loving you and Marcus. Logan felt something tighten in his chest. This money isn't magic. It's 40 years of double shifts, of saying no to things I wanted so I could say yes to this policy. It's every lottery ticket I didn't buy, every vacation I didn't take, every new dress I didn't need. It's love turned into numbers on a page. Jennifer's voice broke slightly, but she continued. I know you're wondering why I never told you. Baby, I didn't want your last memories of me to be filled with fear and sadness. I wanted you to remember me strong, capable of taking care of you even after I was gone. Logan thought about the woman who'd written these words. A nurse who'd spent 40 years caring for others, who'd worked double shifts, who'd sacrificed everything for 2 children who weren't even her own biological children, who'd cleaned this very bank building as part of a night crew, invisible to people like him. This money gives you choices I never had, Jennifer read. You can go to any school you want. You can become anything you dream. You and Marcus will never have to worry about rent or food, or choosing between medicine and groceries. The words hit Logan like physical blows. Rent, food, medicine. The basics of survival that he spent more on a business lunch than Rose Bennett had earned in a week. But Ariana, listen carefully. Money doesn't make you better than anyone. It just gives you choices. Your real wealth is in your kindness, your brilliant mind, your generous heart. Jennifer paused, wiping her eyes. Logan realized his own vision was blurring. Never look down on people who work hard jobs, because I was one of them. Every nurse, every cleaner, every cashier, every person trying to make an honest living deserves respect. They all have dreams. They all have worth. The words were aimed directly at Logan, though Rose Bennett had died 6 months before he'd ever met her granddaughter. She'd known. She'd known exactly what kind of judgment Ariana would face when she walked into places like Sterling Heights. She'd known because she'd experienced it herself every day for 40 years. I watched you grow into the most beautiful soul, Jennifer continued, her voice barely steady now. The way you help other kids with homework at the community center. The way you share your lunch even when you don't have enough. The way you take care of Marcus with so much love. That's who you are, and money can't change that unless you let it. Logan thought about Ariana's first question when she'd seen the account balance. Not what can I buy? Not am I rich? But is there enough for groceries? Even with $52 million to her name, her first thought had been feeding her 7-year-old brother. Take care of your brother. Study hard. Build a good life. But most important, baby, be happy. That's all I ever wanted. For you to be happy and free. Jennifer's voice cracked completely on the next line. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the words in all the books ever written. Forever your Grandma Rose. Silence filled the conference room. Jennifer carefully refolded the letter and handed it back to Ariana, who clutched it against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her heart beating. Which Logan realized it might be. Your grandmother, Logan said, his own voice unsteady, was an extraordinary woman. I know, Ariana said simply. Logan set the folder down on the table and pulled out the documents inside. She researched estate planning for months. Used the free legal clinic on South Halsted to set up the trust properly. She specified everything: guardianship provisions, educational funds, healthcare coverage. She even included specific provisions for Marcus's asthma treatments. Ariana's head snapped up. How did she know about his asthma? He wasn't diagnosed until 3 months before she died. She knew because she was paying attention, Jennifer said softly. The trust documents show she updated them right up until the end. Every time she learned something new about what you needed, she adjusted the provisions. Logan pulled out another document. She set up the monthly allowance to increase annually based on inflation. She established an emergency fund for unexpected expenses. She even included money for therapy. She wanted you to have help processing your grief, help adjusting to your new circumstances. She thought of everything, Ariana whispered. Everything, Jennifer confirmed, down to the smallest detail. This is some of the most comprehensive trust planning I've seen in 25 years of banking. And she did it while working double shifts, while raising 2 children alone, while dying of cancer. Logan looked at Ariana, at this 12-year-old girl who'd walked into his bank asking for nothing more than to check her balance, and felt the full weight of his shame crash over him. I'm sorry, he said, and meant it more than he'd meant anything in his life. I looked at you and saw poverty. I should have seen worth. Ariana studied him for a long moment. My grandmother always said that how people treat you when they think you have nothing tells you everything about who they really are. The words cut deeper than any accusation could have. She was right, Logan said simply. And I failed that test spectacularly. Logan remained standing by the window, the Chicago skyline stretching out behind him. A monument to success, to wealth, to everything he'd built and everything he'd become. But looking at Ariana Bennett, at the letter clutched against her chest, at the evidence of a love so profound it had survived death itself, all of that success felt hollow. Empty. May I sit? He asked quietly. Jennifer's expression said she'd rather he leave, but Ariana nodded. Logan pulled out a chair across from her, not at the head of the table where he usually sat, not in a position of authority. He sat like a supplicant, like someone asking for something he had no right to receive. Up close, he could see details he'd missed in the lobby. The careful way Ariana had braided her hair, even though it was coming loose now. The fact that her clothes, though patched and worn, were meticulously clean. The way she held herself with a dignity that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with how she'd been raised. "Ariana," Logan began, then had to stop and clear his throat. "I owe you an apology. What I did downstairs was unforgivable." The words felt inadequate even as he said them. How do you apologize for cruelty? For humiliation? For judging someone's worth by the condition of their shoes? "I judged you based on your clothes," he continued, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "Based on your age. Based on the color of your skin. Based on your apparent poverty. I made assumptions that I had absolutely no right to make." Ariana listened silently, her expression giving nothing away. "I was cruel for entertainment," Logan said, and the admission tasted bitter. "I humiliated you in front of a room full of people because I thought it would be amusing. Because making you feel small made me feel powerful. And I was wrong. Completely, utterly, inexcusably wrong." Jennifer was watching this exchange with the intensity of a prosecutor evaluating a witness. Logan could feel her judgment, could sense her skepticism. She'd worked with him for 15 years. She knew exactly who he was, what he was capable of. She had no reason to believe this apology was anything more than damage control. Ariana studied him with eyes that seemed far too old for 12. Eyes that had seen too much loss, too much struggle, too much of the world's casual cruelty. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "My grandmother always said that how people treat you when they think you have nothing tells you everything about who they really are." The words hit Logan like a fist to the chest. Because she was right. Rose Bennett was right. In that moment in the lobby, when he'd looked at Ariana and seen only poverty, only otherness, only someone he could dismiss, that had been the truth of who he was. Not the polished CEO who appeared on financial news shows. Not the philanthropist who wrote checks to charity galas. But the man who would mock a hungry child because her shoes were falling apart. "Your grandmother was absolutely right," Logan said quietly. "And I failed that test. Failed it completely." He looked down at his hands, soft hands that had never done real physical labor, that had never scrubbed floors or worked double shifts or sacrificed anything of consequence. Hands that wore a watch worth more than Rose Bennett had made in a year. "I grew up poor," Logan said, the words coming slowly. "In South Chicago, not far from Englewood actually. My father was a laborer before he started his construction business. We lived in a one-bedroom apartment, 5 of us. I wore second-hand clothes to school. Got free lunch. Got mocked for it daily." He looked up at Ariana. "There was this kid, Tommy Richardson. His family had money, not rich, but comfortable. And he made it his mission to remind me every single day that I was less than him. Less than everyone. He'd knock my books out of my hands, steal my lunch, make jokes about the holes in my shoes. And everyone would laugh. Even the teachers sometimes." "I'm sorry," Ariana said quietly. The simple kindness of those words nearly undid him. Here was a child he'd just humiliated, offering him sympathy. "I swore when I got out of there that I'd never be vulnerable again," Logan continued. "I'd never let anyone make me feel small. I'd become so successful, so wealthy, so powerful that no one could ever hurt me again." "Did it work?" Ariana asked. Logan let out a bitter laugh. "It worked perfectly. I became untouchable. Respected. Feared even. I built walls around myself so high that nothing could get through. But," Ariana prompted. "But somewhere along the way," Logan said, his voice rough, "I stopped being the victim and became the bully. I became Tommy Richardson. I became exactly what I'd hated. I started measuring people's worth by their bank accounts. Started looking at people in worn-out shoes and seeing someone to mock instead of someone who reminded me of myself." Jennifer shifted in her seat, but didn't interrupt. She was still watching, still assessing. "I've spent 20 years building walls," Logan said. "Money, success, power. I thought they'd protect me. I thought they'd make me safe. But they just made me cruel. They made me forget where I came from. Made me forget what it felt like to be judged, to be dismissed, to be treated like I was nothing." He gestured toward Ariana, toward the letter still clutched in her hands. "And then you walked into my bank, and I looked at you and saw someone I could dismiss. Someone I could make myself feel superior to. And I did it publicly, cruelly, deliberately. Seeing you now, hearing about your grandmother, reading about what she sacrificed, it's like looking in a mirror and hating what I see. The silence that followed was heavy. Outside the windows, Chicago went about its business. Boats on the lake, cars on the streets, people living lives that would never intersect with this moment. But in Conference Room B, everything felt suspended. Ariana's question, when it came, was quiet but devastating. Are you sorry because you were wrong about the money, or are you sorry because you were mean to someone who didn't deserve it? Logan took a breath, forcing himself to be honest. Both, he admitted. And I know that's not good enough. I know the better answer would be that I'd feel exactly the same even if you didn't have $1 to your name. But I can't claim that level of moral clarity when I've just proven I don't have it. He leaned forward, his elbows on the table. What I can say is that seeing that number on the screen, seeing that you had $52 million, it didn't make me respect you. It made me ashamed of myself. Because if I could treat someone so cruelly based on their appearance, what does that say about everything I've built? Every success I've celebrated? It says you forgot something important, Ariana said softly. What's that? That people are people, no matter what they have or don't have. Grandma Rose used to say that everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Everyone deserves kindness. Everyone deserves dignity. Logan felt tears threatening for the first time in years. She was right. She was absolutely right. And I'm so sorry I didn't treat you with the dignity you deserved. The dignity every person deserves. But you want to now, Ariana said. It wasn't a question. I want to be better, Logan said. I want to help you and Marcus if you'll let me. Not because you're a valuable client, though you are, but because I need to start making amends for 20 years of forgetting what your grandmother understood instinctively. Jennifer finally spoke up, her voice firm. Ariana, you don't owe him anything. You don't have to accept his help. You don't have to forgive him. You have resources now. You have options. You can walk out of this bank and never see Logan Reeves again. Ariana looked at Jennifer, then back at Logan. She was thinking, processing, weighing. Finally, she asked, what kind of help? Logan chose his words carefully. Practical help first. You and Marcus need a safe place to live. Good schools. Stability. I own residential properties throughout the city. I can arrange safe housing immediately. Not as charity, but as what you deserve. What your grandmother wanted for you. What else? Ariana asked. Honestly, Logan said, I want to learn from you. From what your grandmother taught you. I've spent 20 years learning how to make money. Maybe it's time I learned what money is actually for. What really matters. Ariana was quiet for a long moment. She looked down at the letter in her hands, running her fingers over her grandmother's handwriting. Logan could almost see her having a conversation with Rose Bennett in her mind, asking what she should do. I'll think about it, Ariana said finally. But I need to get home first. Marcus has been alone too long. Well, Mrs. Patterson is watching him, but he worries when I'm gone. I need to tell him what happened. That we're going to be okay. Of course, Logan said. Let me arrange a car. I can take the bus, Ariana said. Please, Logan said. Let me do this one thing right. Let me get you home safely. Ariana studied him for another long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. As she stood, carefully folding the letter and putting it back in her pocket, Logan felt something shift inside him. This wasn't redemption. He didn't deserve that, not yet. But maybe it was a beginning. A first step toward becoming someone Rose Bennett would have respected. Someone who understood that worth had nothing to do with the numbers in a bank account. Logan's Mercedes S-Class sat at the curb outside Sterling Heights Private Banking, its polished black surface reflecting the afternoon sun like a mirror. The car cost more than most people made in 2 years. $110,000 of German engineering, leather seats, and technology designed to insulate its occupants from the world outside. Jennifer stood on the sidewalk next to Ariana, her arms crossed, her expression making it clear she thought this was a terrible idea. "You don't have to do this," Jennifer said to Ariana, ignoring Logan entirely. "I can arrange a car service. Or I can drive you myself." "It's okay," Ariana said quietly. "I want to see where we're going, what the neighborhood looks like." She was talking about the apartment Logan had mentioned, but Jennifer clearly heard the deeper meaning. She wanted to see if Logan Reeves would actually follow through, or if this was just performance, guilt that would evaporate once the cameras were off. Logan opened the rear passenger door. Ariana hesitated, then climbed in. The leather seats probably cost more than a month's rent in Englewood. The new car smell, that carefully engineered scent of luxury, filled the interior. Logan closed her door gently and walked around to the driver's side. "Call me when you get there," Jennifer said through the window. "And Ariana, you have my direct number now. If anything feels wrong, if you need anything, you call me immediately." "I will," Ariana promised. Logan started the engine, a nearly silent purr that cost tens of thousands in engineering to achieve, and pulled into Chicago traffic. For the first few minutes, neither of them spoke. Logan navigated through the financial district, past buildings he'd worked in, past restaurants where he regularly dropped $200 on lunch without thinking about it. "Where are we going?" Logan finally asked. "South," Ariana said. "Englewood, 6847 South Halsted." Logan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Englewood. He hadn't been to that neighborhood in 20 years. Not since he'd left, not since he'd escaped and sworn he'd never go back. They drove south, and Logan watched the city transform through the windshield. The gleaming glass towers of downtown gave way to older buildings, then to modest homes, then to blocks where prosperity had never quite arrived and hope felt like a luxury no one could afford. The transition was gradual but absolute. Whole Foods became corner stores with barred windows. Starbucks became payday loan shops. Luxury condos became apartment buildings with broken windows and fire escapes that looked like they might collapse at any moment. "Turn left here," Ariana directed. Logan did, and felt something twist in his chest. He knew these streets, had walked them as a kid, had run from bullies down that alley, had stood on that corner waiting for a bus that was always late, always too crowded, that smelled like exhaust and desperation. He'd spent 20 years pretending this world didn't exist, that he'd never been part of it, that the distance between downtown Chicago and Englewood was measured in more than just miles, that it was a gulf between two completely different realities, and he'd successfully crossed it, left it behind forever. But here he was, driving back into the neighborhood he'd sworn never to see again. And this time, he was seeing it through different eyes. "That's it," Ariana said, pointing. "The red brick building." Logan pulled to the curb and stared. The building was 5 stories of crumbling brick and shattered dreams. Windows were broken on the second floor, covered with cardboard and duct tape. Graffiti covered every available surface, some artistic, most just territorial markers. Trash bags lined the sidewalk, torn open by rats or stray dogs, or people looking for anything salvageable. This was where Ariana lived, where she'd been living while her grandmother worked double shifts, where 7-year-old Marcus had been asking if they'd have dinner tonight. "The elevator hasn't worked in 3 years," Ariana said matter-of-factly, like this was just normal, just how life worked. "We're on the 4th floor. It's not a bad climb once you're used to it." She got out of the car before Logan could open her door. He followed, acutely aware of his $3,000 suit, his Italian leather shoes, the Patek Philippe on his wrist that cost more than everyone in this building probably made combined in a year. A group of teenagers sat on the front steps, their eyes tracking Logan's movements with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. He was clearly an outsider here. Everything about him screamed money, privilege, otherness. But then one of them saw Ariana, and his expression changed completely. "Ari, you're back. Marcus has been asking about you all day." "I know, Carlos. I'm sorry. I had to take care of something important." She gestured to Logan. "This is Mr. Reeves. He's going to help us." Carlos's eyes narrowed skeptically, but he nodded. Your brother's upstairs with Mrs. Patterson. She's been worried too. The building's interior was worse than the exterior. The hallway was dark, half the light fixtures broken or missing entirely, and smelled of mildew, cooking grease, and something else Logan couldn't identify, but that made his stomach turn. The floor tiles were cracked and missing in places, revealing rotted wood underneath. They started climbing stairs. Logan, who worked out at an exclusive gym 5 days a week, found himself winded by the second floor. Ariana climbed steadily, practiced, like someone who'd made this journey hundreds of times. On the third floor landing, they passed an elderly woman struggling with 2 bags of groceries. Without hesitation, Ariana stopped. "Mrs. Chun, let me help you." "Oh, Ariana, sweetheart, you don't have to." "I've got it," Ariana said, taking the heavier bag. She turned to Logan expectantly. After a moment, he took the other bag. They helped Mrs. Chun to her apartment, 3F, and she thanked them profusely, hugging Ariana like family. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you, baby. So proud." On the 4th floor, they passed a young mother sitting against the wall, a baby on her hip and 2 toddlers playing with a single toy truck. She looked exhausted, defeated, like someone who'd been fighting too long with no end in sight. "Hi, Ariana," she said wearily. "Hi, Ms. Williams. How's the baby?" "Still colicky, but we're managing." Further down the hall, a teenager sat doing homework under the bare bulb of the hallway light, textbooks spread on the floor around him. "Hey, Jamal," Ariana said. "Apartment still too loud?" "Mom's boyfriend's over," Jamal said, not looking up. "Can't concentrate with them yelling." Each person greeted Ariana by name. Each interaction carried genuine warmth, real connection. These people had nothing. Logan could see that in every detail, every worn piece of clothing, every tired face, but they had each other. They had community. They looked out for one another because survival required solidarity, because no one else was coming to help them. They reached apartment 4D. The door's paint was peeling, the number hanging by a single screw. Ariana pulled out a key and unlocked it. "Marcus," she called. "I'm home." A small boy burst from one of the interior doors and threw himself at Ariana with enough force to nearly knock her over. He was 7 years old, small for his age, with the same dark eyes as his sister. His clothes were clean but obviously too small, probably hand-me-downs from when Ariana was younger. "I was so scared." Marcus sobbed into Ariana's shoulder. "You were gone so long. Mrs. Patterson said you went to do grown-up stuff, and I thought maybe you weren't coming back like Grandma didn't come back and—" "Sure, baby, I'm here," Ariana said, holding him tight. "I'll always come back. I promise. I'm never leaving you." Marcus finally noticed Logan standing in the doorway. His eyes went wide, and he pressed closer to Ariana. "Who's he?" "This is Mr. Reeves," Ariana said. "He's from the bank. He's going to help us, Marcus. With the money Grandma left." An elderly woman emerged from what Logan assumed was the bedroom, though he couldn't see how this apartment could possibly have more than one tiny bedroom. She was in her 70s, with kind eyes and capable hands that spoke of a lifetime of hard work. "Thank God you're back," she said, pulling Ariana into a hug. "He's been so worried." Then her eyes landed on Logan, and her expression shifted immediately to suspicion. "Who's this?" "Mrs. Patterson, this is Logan Reeves. He's the CEO of the bank where Grandma set up our trust." Ariana took a breath. "The account is real, Mrs. Patterson. The money, it's all there. Everything Grandma told you about." Mrs. Patterson's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh, Rose," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You beautiful, brilliant woman. You actually did it." She pulled Ariana into a fierce hug. "Your grandma talked about this, you know. Told me she was working on something, some way to make sure you babies would be taken care of. I didn't fully believe it, seemed too good to be true. But Rose Bennett always kept her promises." Logan stood awkwardly in the doorway, acutely aware that he didn't belong here. The apartment was tiny, maybe 500 square feet total. One small bedroom visible through an open door, where he could see a single bed pushed against the wall. The kids must share it. a bathroom the size of a closet, and this main room that served as kitchen, living room, and dining room all at once. The furniture was old and worn, but meticulously clean. Children's drawings were taped to the walls, Marcus's kindergarten art, Ariana's more sophisticated sketches. A small bookshelf held well-worn library books arranged by color. Plastic flowers sat in a vase on a small table, positioned to catch the afternoon light from the single window. Everything was clean. Everything was organized. Everything showed care and love and desperate attempts to make poverty look like something else. But Logan's eyes kept catching on other details. Marcus's shoes, held together with glue and hope. The refrigerator door hanging open slightly, revealing empty shelves. Blankets hung over the windows because there were no curtains. A space heater in the corner that probably cost more to run than they could afford. These children had been living in real poverty. Not the sanitized version shown in charity commercials. Real, grinding, everyday poverty that meant choosing between food and heat, that meant going hungry so your little brother could eat, that meant wearing shoes that hurt because new ones weren't an option. Marcus was still clinging to Ariana, but he was watching Logan with cautious curiosity. Finally, he asked the question that shattered Logan's heart into pieces. Ariana, does this mean we don't have to be hungry anymore? The simple question landed like a bomb. Mrs. Patterson covered her mouth. Logan felt something break inside his chest. Ariana knelt down, so she was eye level with her brother. She took his small face in her hands, and her voice was steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "No, baby," she said. "We never have to be hungry again. Grandma made sure of that. She loved us so much that even though she's not here anymore, she's still taking care of us. We're going to be okay now, Marcus. I promise." Marcus buried his face in her shoulder and started crying. Not sad tears, but relief, exhaustion, the release of fear he'd been carrying for far too long. And Logan Reeves, who'd spent 20 years building walls around his heart, who'd convinced himself that success meant forgetting where you came from, stood in that tiny apartment and finally understood what he'd lost. What he'd sacrificed for his perfect life in that glass tower downtown. What Rose Bennett had understood all along. That love, not money, was the only wealth that truly mattered. 2 weeks after Ariana Bennett walked into Sterling Heights private banking, Logan Reeves stood in the doorway of a 2-bedroom apartment in Logan Square and watched a 7-year-old boy see his own bedroom for the first time in his life. The apartment wasn't extravagant. Logan owned properties worth 10 times as much, but it was safe, clean, in a building with working elevators and heat that actually functioned. The windows had real curtains instead of blankets. The refrigerator hummed reliably. The locks on the doors were solid. And most importantly, it was 3 blocks from one of the best public elementary schools in Chicago. Marcus stood in the doorway of the smaller bedroom, staring at the twin bed with its new sheets and comforter, blue, with stars, because Ariana had mentioned he loved astronomy. Next to it sat a small desk with a reading lamp. A bookshelf waited to be filled. The closet was empty but ready for clothes that actually fit. "This is mine," Marcus whispered. "Just mine." "Just yours," Ariana confirmed, her own voice thick with emotion. Marcus walked slowly to the bed and sat down carefully, like he was afraid it might disappear if he moved too fast. He touched the comforter with tentative fingers. Then he lay back, spread his arms wide, and started crying. Not sad tears. Relief tears. Joy tears. The tears of a child who'd spent 7 years sharing a bed in a 1-room apartment and now had his own space, his own bed, his own small corner of the world that was just his. Logan turned away, unable to watch without his own eyes burning. Mrs. Patterson, who'd come to help them move in, patted his arm gently. "You did a good thing here, Mr. Reeves," she said quietly. "I did the bare minimum," Logan replied. "What took me 2 phone calls and a signature should never have been necessary in the first place." Over the past 2 weeks, Logan had been visiting regularly. At first, Ariana had been wary, keeping conversations short and surface level. But gradually, cautiously, she'd begun to let him in. He'd taken them grocery shopping at the Whole Foods near their new apartment, a place Ariana had never set foot in because the prices were unthinkable on their old budget. Logan had watched Marcus's face as they'd filled the cart, really filled it, with fresh fruit and vegetables, milk and cheese, bread that wasn't the cheapest option, cookies and juice boxes. "Can we really get all this?" Marcus had asked, his eyes wide. "We can get whatever you want," Ariana had said, and Logan had seen her struggling with it too. The sudden abundance after years of scarcity, the disorienting shift from choosing between food and rent to having enough for both. Logan had helped Ariana research schools. In the process, he discovered she was academically gifted, testing at a 10th grade reading level despite being only 12. She devoured books, loved mathematics, asked questions that showed a mind hungry for knowledge but starved of opportunity. "Have you thought about private school?" Logan had asked. Ariana had shaken her head. "I want to stay in public school. That's where the kids who need help are. That's where I can make a difference." Even at 12, even with her life transformed overnight, she was thinking about how to help others. Rose Bennett's legacy lived on in every choice her granddaughter made. The neighbors from the old building came to visit. Carlos and his friends, Mrs. Chun, the Williams family, Jamal who did his homework in the hallway. They came bearing small gifts, a plant, a welcome card, homemade cookies, and their presence filled the apartment with warmth and laughter. Logan watched these interactions and saw something he'd missed in his own rise from poverty to wealth: community. Real connection. People who cared about each other not because of what they could get, but simply because they'd survived together, struggled together, understood each other's battles. His own wealthy friends would never show up with homemade cookies. They'd send expensive gifts through assistance, keep interactions transactional, measure relationships by usefulness. But the transformation wasn't just happening in Ariana's life. It was happening in Logan's too. The Monday after visiting Englewood, Logan had called an emergency meeting of Sterling Heights' entire staff. 200 employees packed into the main conference room, wondering what crisis had prompted this unprecedented gathering. Logan had stood at the front, no notes, no prepared speech, and told them about Ariana Bennett, about a 12-year-old girl he'd humiliated, about her grandmother who'd cleaned their building for years while saving $50 million for her grandchildren's future, about the assumptions he'd made and how catastrophically wrong he'd been. Effective immediately, Logan had announced, "We are implementing new policies regarding how we treat every person who walks through our doors. Every person. I don't care if they're wearing a $3,000 suit or shoes held together with duct tape. They will be treated with dignity and respect." He'd seen the skeptical looks, the exchanged glances. This was private banking. Their entire business model was built on exclusivity. "I'm also announcing the creation of a scholarship fund for children of service workers," Logan had continued. "We will be significantly increasing wages for our cleaning staff, security personnel, and maintenance workers. And we will be implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, myself included." 2 senior managers had stood up immediately. "Mr. Reeves, this is insane. Our profit margins are obscene." Logan had cut them off. "We can afford human decency. If you can't accept that, there's the door." Both managers had walked out. Logan hadn't tried to stop them. The changes had come swiftly after that. Increased wages. The cleaning staff now made a living wage with benefits. A scholarship fund seeded with $2 million of Logan's personal money. Sensitivity training that forced every employee to examine their own biases and assumptions. The board had been furious. "You're destroying everything we've built," one member had shouted during an emergency meeting. "No," Logan had replied calmly. "I'm destroying what I built it on. There's a difference." 2 board members had resigned in protest. Logan had accepted their resignations without hesitation and replaced them with people who understood that a bank could be both profitable and humane. The financial press had been brutal. "Reeves goes soft," declared one headline. "Banking CEO's strange transformation worries investors," said another. His peers called constantly, asking if he was having some kind of breakdown, if he needed help, if the stress had finally gotten to him. Logan told them all the same thing. I met someone who taught me what real wealth looks like. And it's not in a bank account. But the transformation, Logan was discovering, came with costs he hadn't anticipated. One evening, he found Ariana sitting alone in her new bedroom, a room with its own desk and bookshelf and window overlooking a tree-lined street, looking miserable. What's wrong? Logan asked from the doorway. Ariana looked up, her eyes red. I went back to Englewood today, to see Carlos and the others. And it was different. They were different with me. How so? Some of them were happy for me. Really happy. But others. She trailed off. Others looked at me like I'd betrayed them. Like having money means I'm not one of them anymore. Like I think I'm better than they are now. Logan came in and sat in the desk chair. Are you better than they are? No. Of course not. Do you think you're better? Never, Ariana said fiercely. They're my friends. We survived together. Money doesn't change that. Then tell them that, Logan said. Show them through your actions. But Ariana, I need to be honest with you. Some people won't believe it. Some will resent you no matter what you do. Not because of anything you've done wrong, but because your success reminds them of what they don't have. That's not fair. No, Logan agreed. It's not. But it's human. Ariana wiped her eyes. Did you lose friends when you got successful? I didn't have friends to lose, Logan admitted. I was so focused on escaping poverty that I didn't let anyone get close. I built walls instead of bridges. I told myself it was necessary, that attachment was weakness. But really, I was just scared. Of what? Of still being that poor kid inside. Of someone seeing through the expensive suits and fancy watch and realizing I was still just a kid from South Chicago who didn't belong. Ariana studied him. Do you still feel that way? Logan considered the question. Sometimes. But I'm starting to understand something your grandmother knew all along. You can't escape yourself. You can only decide who you want to be. Who do you want to be? Ariana asked. Logan met her eyes. Someone your grandmother would have respected. Someone who uses wealth to build bridges instead of walls. Someone who sees people, really sees them, instead of just seeing their bank accounts or their shoes or their zip codes. That's going to be hard, Ariana said. I know. People are going to judge you for it. Your rich friends, your business partners. They're already calling you soft. I know that too. So why are you doing it? Logan thought about Marcus crying on his new bed. About Mrs. Chun struggling with groceries on those stairs. About Ariana asking if there was enough for groceries while sitting on $52 million because she'd been hungry for so long that abundance still felt like a dream that might evaporate. Because a 12-year-old girl taught me that I've been measuring success all wrong, Logan said. Because your grandmother spent 40 years proving that worth has nothing to do with wealth. And because I'm tired of being Tommy Richardson. Who's Tommy Richardson? The bully who made my childhood miserable. The person I swore I'd never be like. Logan smiled sadly. Turns out I became him anyway. But maybe it's not too late to change. Ariana nodded slowly. Then she said something that would stay with Logan for the rest of his life. Grandma Rose used to say that every day is a chance to be better than you were yesterday. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try. Logan felt something loosen in his chest. Some knot of shame and fear he'd been carrying for 20 years. Your grandmother, he said, was the wisest person I never met. She would have liked you, Ariana said. Not the you from 2 weeks ago, but the you you're trying to become. It was, Logan realized, the greatest compliment anyone had ever given him. 3 months after walking into Sterling Heights private banking with worn sneakers and desperate hope, Ariana Bennett sat in the same conference room where she'd first eaten a real meal in days, and announced she was giving away $15 million. Logan Reeves and Jennifer Martinez stared at her across the oval table. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sparkled in the winter sunlight, the same city, but somehow different now. Or maybe Logan was different, and that changed how he saw everything. Say that again? Jennifer asked carefully. Ariana pulled out a folder. She'd learned to come prepared to these meetings, and slid it across the table. I want to start a foundation. The Rose Bennett Foundation for Healthcare Workers and Their Families. I want to donate $15 million from my trust to fund it. Logan opened the folder and found himself looking at a proposal that was remarkably sophisticated for a 12-year-old. But then, he'd learned not to underestimate Ariana Bennett. I've been thinking about Grandma Rose's letter, Ariana continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was proposing. She said money is just money. It's what you do with it that matters. Well, I want to do something that matters. She stood and walked to the windows, looking out over the city. Grandma spent 40 years taking care of other people. She worked double shifts, came home exhausted, and still found energy to help patients who needed her. And she wasn't alone. There are thousands of nurses, home health aides, hospital workers who do the same thing. They take care of everyone else, but nobody takes care of them. What did you have in mind? Logan asked, though he suspected he already knew. He'd watched Ariana enough over the past 3 months to understand how her mind worked, how Rose Bennett's values had shaped every decision she made. Ariana returned to the table and pulled out more documents. Scholarships for children of healthcare workers. Emergency funds for families facing medical bills, eviction, food insecurity. But the biggest thing, I want to open a free health clinic in Englewood, in Grandma Rose's name. Jennifer was reading through the proposal, her expression shifting from surprise to admiration. Ariana, this is incredibly comprehensive. Did you put this together yourself? Mrs. Patterson helped, Ariana admitted. She used to work in nonprofit administration before she retired. And I've been researching. There are models for this, community clinics that provide free or low-cost care. I want to create one that specifically serves the families of healthcare workers. The people who spend their lives taking care of others, but can't always afford care for themselves. $15 million, Logan said slowly. Ariana, that's almost a third of your trust. Are you absolutely sure about this? Ariana met his eyes without hesitation. Grandma didn't save this money, so I could buy a mansion or expensive cars. She saved it so Marcus and I would have choices, so we could make a difference. This is the choice I'm making. Logan felt something break open in his chest, not painful, but profound. 3 months ago, this girl had walked into his bank asking if she had enough for groceries. Now she was proposing to give away $15 million to help people she'd never met, because her grandmother had taught her that wealth meant nothing if you didn't use it to help others. I want to match it, Logan heard himself say. Both Ariana and Jennifer looked at him in surprise. $15 million from you, $15 million from me, Logan continued. $30 million should be enough to get the foundation properly established, to open the clinic, to create a sustainable scholarship program. Logan, Jennifer said carefully, that's a significant commitment. I know exactly what it is, Logan replied. He looked at Ariana. Your grandmother changed my life without ever meeting me. This foundation, it's my chance to honor what she stood for. But more than that, I want to help run it. If you'll have me. Ariana studied him with those 2 wise eyes. Logan knew what she was seeing. The man who'd humiliated her 3 months ago, who'd judged her by her shoes and the color of her skin, who'd laughed at the idea that she could belong in his world. But he hoped she also saw the changes. The transformation that was still ongoing, still imperfect, but real. Grandma always said everyone deserves a second chance to be better, Ariana said finally. Okay, but I have conditions. Anything, Logan said and meant it. Marcus and I get to help decide who receives grants. Real families, not just applications and paperwork. I want to meet them, understand their stories. Agreed. The clinic has to be in Englewood, or another neighborhood that really needs it. Not some rich area where it's just for show. Absolutely. And you have to keep changing the bank, Ariana said, her voice firm. Keep treating people with dignity. Keep paying fair wages. Keep remembering what you learned. This can't just be about feeling good about one big donation. It has to be about changing how you see people. All people. Logan nodded slowly. You're right, and I promise I'll keep trying. I'll probably mess up sometimes. 20 years of bad habits don't disappear overnight. But I'll keep trying to be someone your grandmother would have respected. Then we have a deal, Ariana said, extending her hand. Logan shook it, marveling at the strength in that small hand, at the wisdom in someone who should still believe the world was simple and fair. 6 months later, on a warm June afternoon, Logan stood in a converted storefront in Englewood and watched a dream become reality. The Rose Bennett Foundation Free Health Clinic had opened its doors 4 weeks ago. Already, they'd served over 200 families, providing checkups, prescriptions, treatment for chronic conditions that had gone untreated because healthcare was a luxury people couldn't afford. The walls were covered with photographs of Rose Bennett. Young Rose in her nursing school uniform, Rose at work at Cook County Hospital, Rose with infant Ariana and toddler Marcus. Each photo showed the same warm smile, the same gentle strength, the same love that had transcended death itself. The clinic was packed for the official opening ceremony. Healthcare workers who'd worked alongside Rose, families she'd cared for, neighbors from her building. Mrs. Patterson sat in the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Carlos and his friends stood near the back, looking proud and slightly uncomfortable in their dress clothes. And scattered throughout the crowd were the first scholarship recipients, 12 children of healthcare workers who'd received full funding for college preparatory programs. Their parents looked at Ariana with expressions of gratitude, so profound it was almost painful to witness. Marcus stood next to his sister at the podium, looking nervous but determined. At 8 years old, he still seemed small for his age, but he'd gained weight in the past 6 months. His eyes were brighter. He laughed more. He was finally getting to be a child instead of a survivor. Ariana stepped up to the microphone, and the room fell silent. My grandma taught me that real wealth isn't money, she began, her voice clear and strong. It's love, kindness, and what you give to others. She worked herself to exhaustion, took double shifts, sacrificed everything so that Marcus and I could have choices she never had. She gestured to the photos on the walls. She was a nurse for 40 years. She touched thousands of lives. She made a difference every single day, not because it made her rich or famous, but because it was the right thing to do. Because people needed help, and she could provide it. Ariana's voice wavered slightly. I miss her every day. I wish she could see this clinic, see her name on the wall, know that her legacy is helping people just like she always did. But I think maybe she does know. I think maybe she's looking down and smiling, seeing that what she taught us is still alive. She looked at Marcus, who stepped forward shyly. Grandma always said everyone deserves dignity, Marcus said, his voice small but steady. Even when life is hard, even when you're struggling, everyone deserves to be treated like they matter. The crowd applauded, and Marcus quickly stepped back, his job done. Logan took his place at the microphone. 3 months ago, the thought of speaking in front of a crowd like this, people from Englewood, people who worked service jobs, people he'd spent 20 years pretending didn't exist, would have made him uncomfortable. Now, looking out at their faces, he felt something else entirely. Humility, gratitude, purpose. 3 months ago, Logan began, I was a man who measured success by bank balances and feared vulnerability. I'd built walls around myself so high that I couldn't see the people around me. I'd convinced myself that wealth equaled worth, that power equaled respect, that the numbers in your account determined your value as a human being. He paused, finding Ariana in the crowd. Then a 12-year-old girl walked into my bank and taught me what I'd forgotten, what I'd maybe never really known. She taught me that how we treat people when they have nothing reveals who we truly are. That dignity isn't something you earn, it's something everyone deserves. That real wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch and the kindness you show. Logan gestured to the photos of Rose Bennett. Rose Bennett never knew me, but she changed my life. Through her granddaughter, through her letter, through the example of a life spent in service to others, she showed me what actually matters. This foundation is my attempt to live up to her legacy, to be the kind of person she would have respected. He looked at Jennifer Martinez, who'd become not just a colleague, but a friend in these past months. At Mrs. Patterson, who'd shared stories about Rose that made Logan wish desperately that he'd known her. At the families waiting for their turn at the clinic, some of whom had been going without medical care for years because they couldn't afford it. The Rose Bennett Foundation will continue her work, Logan said. We'll provide scholarships, emergency funds, and free health care to the families of healthcare workers. We'll make sure the people who spend their lives caring for others get cared for themselves. And we'll do it because Rose Bennett taught me, that this is what wealth is for. Not to build bigger houses or buy fancier cars, but to make a real, meaningful difference in people's lives. The applause was thunderous. People stood, wiping tears, calling out thanks and blessings. Logan stepped back from the microphone, overwhelmed. Ariana appeared at his side. "Good speech," she said. "I meant every word." "I know. That's why it was good." They stood together, watching the crowd mingle, watching healthcare workers hug their scholarship-winning children, watching Mrs. Patterson tell stories about Rose to anyone who would listen. "You know what's funny?" Ariana said after a moment. "What?" 6 months ago, I walked into your bank because I was desperate. Because I didn't know if we'd have dinner that night. I was so scared I almost turned around a dozen times. "I'm glad you didn't," Logan said quietly. "Me too. Because yeah, I found out about the money. That changed our lives. But I also found you. Found someone who was willing to change, willing to be better. That matters almost as much as the money." Logan felt his throat tighten. "I think your grandmother would be proud of you." "I think she'd be proud of both of us," Ariana replied. She always believed people could change, could grow, could choose to be better than they were. As the afternoon wore on, Logan found himself in conversation with people he never would have spoken to 6 months ago. A nurse who'd worked alongside Rose and shared stories that made her come alive in Logan's imagination. A janitor from Cook County Hospital who remembered Rose always saying hello, always knowing his name. A home health aide who'd cared for Rose in her final days and described the grace with which she'd faced death. Each story added another layer to Logan's understanding of the woman whose legacy had transformed his life. Rose Bennett hadn't been a saint. She'd been human, flawed, exhausted, sometimes frustrated. But she'd chosen kindness anyway. Chosen sacrifice. Chosen love. And that choice had rippled outward in ways she could never have imagined. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the clinic windows, Logan stood with Ariana and Marcus in front of the largest photo of Rose Bennett. Her official hospital portrait, in her nursing scrubs, with that warm smile that seemed to say, "I see you. You matter. You're going to be okay." "Thank you, Grandma," Ariana whispered, touching the photo gently. "For everything. For loving us enough to plan for this. For teaching us what really matters. For showing us how to live." Marcus wrapped his arms around his sister. Logan stood beside them, not family but not quite apart either. Connected by circumstance, by transformation, by a legacy that would outlive all of them. In his pocket, Logan carried a copy of Rose Bennett's letter, the one Ariana had allowed him to photocopy. He'd read it dozens of times now, but one passage always stopped him. Money is just money. It's what you do with it that matters. 3 months ago, a screen had shown a number that froze Logan's laughter. $52.4 million belonging to a child in broken shoes. But it was everything that came after. The lesson from Ariana, the legacy of Grandma Rose, the slow, painful, necessary transformation of a man who'd forgotten what mattered, that had finally thawed Logan's heart. He'd learned what his Ivy League education and 20 years of success had never taught him. That true wealth isn't measured in account balances, but in the lives you touch and the dignity you extend to every human being. And standing in that clinic, surrounded by people Rose Bennett had cared for and a community that still remembered her love, Logan Reeves finally understood what it meant to be truly rich. The end.
Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this story inspired you, Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me what part shocked you the most. And don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen for another powerful story.